right. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to The Climb. Today we have Lawrence Duran. Lawrence, we have a very interesting relationship, right? In the current 21st century, I feel like there are parts of it that I find very funny and classic, some parts that are really out there, like number one in the world, very, very unique circumstances that truly a select few of people could ever say that they've lived anything close to your shoes. You know, your background, your experience from young and up to where you are now, like it's all been truly a journey, and really excited to actually get a little bit deeper with you and a little bit more kind of behind the veil of your life. So jumping in here, Lawrence, please tell the world a little bit about yourself.
Wow. Okay, Manuel. Well, thank you. Well, thank you, first of all, for the opportunity. You know, I really do appreciate this, you know. It's kind of hard sometimes to just talk about yourself, isn't it? I mean, I was born and raised in New York City. Parents were immigrants. They came from Spain. My mom came from the Dominican Republic. I went to school in New York. I went to military school, went in elementary school. I went to Archbishop Malloy High School, which was run by Marist Brothers, and I went to Queens College. Graduated.
You were in New York most of your younger life?
Yeah, actually, I moved out of New York when I was in my 30s, 31 years old, in 1991. I moved to Miami, Florida. And again, it's because I wanted to be close to my parents. My parents had retired. My parents, you know, and so I wanted to spend some time with them. And that's what got me to Florida.
Awesome.
But
All
yeah,
right, continue with your education.
Excuse me?
No, I was saying continue on with your education.
Right.
You have a lot of different experience, and your background has been really interesting kind of professions. Like I know that entrepreneurship kind of touched you very young. You were in the medical field at an early age with like paramedic. Like even just your career track itself is also a very unique track.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it really has been a whirlwind life, you know, but I also feel like it's been a blessed life. So you're right. At the age, before I even got my driver's license, I was an EMT. I joined the volunteers, the Astoria Volunteers in New York. And without a driver's license, we started working, you know, as emergency medical technicians. A few years later, I went and I got my paramedic, you know, and back then it was 6 months, and the training was not what it is today, and the tools and equipment. But the ambulances were amazing, and the fact is that we really cared about what we did, and we did an incredible job, you know. I mean, I remember snowstorms, I remember accidents, I mean, just horrific situations, plane crashes in LaGuardia Airport, you know, that we all showed up. I mean, it was something. And I got married in New York City. And we invited approximately, I don't remember what it was, about 130, 135. Again, this is all part of the life, right? I had a whole table of about 12, 15 friends. There were EMTs, there were medics, there were police officers that disappeared during 9/11, you know? They were all there. We were all raised together since we were 16 years old. You know, that was so important to us to always help, right? To be there, to be, you know, service oriented, whatever was needed. We were close. And these individuals, they were married, some were married, there were couples, some of them were just police officers and firemen, EMTs working for the city EMS. And they went into that building and they disappeared. I lost a whole table. I have a video, and whenever we look at our wedding video, that's something that we reminded of, you know, of that great loss. So by the time that happened, I was already in Florida. I had already moved to Florida, and I'm listening to it, and I'm listening to Howard Stern on the radio, and all of a sudden they start talking about what's happening in the Twin Towers. So that was a different episode in my life. I left Florida. I came to Miami, and I started opening up. I started as a consultant, helping doctors set up their networks with managed care companies, doing their contracts for them and so forth. And then from there, I sort of expanded to opening up mental health centers because of my mental health background. Master's in education, but it was really in rehab, you know. And I've been doing it all of my life. Even when I was younger, one of my first jobs was I was director of the Support and Employment Program. Back then, the agency was called the ACR&D. It was the Association for Children for retarded mental development. Was retarded mental development. This was an agency that had about 3,000 employees. I worked there as a director of the support employment program. We started real small, and it really grew tremendously. I was there for 5 years. By the time I left, we had about 400 individuals working all throughout the 5 boroughs of New York City. And I was so proud of the program. We were on television 3 or 4 times. They were interviewed us at the Bronx Zoo. I had guys working in the Bronx Zoo. I had them working at Brooklyn Union Gas. I had them working everywhere. You know, it was incredible. I never would have left the job except that I moved to Florida because my father was ill. He was diagnosed with cancer. So that got me to Florida. When I was in Florida, I started opening up these centers. They're called community mental health centers, where, again, it's a service-oriented. You start helping individuals, you know. I opened my first center in 1994.
Okay. So is that the time, like, would you say you were like an entrepreneur at that point? Like, were you building kind of your own business, LLC, or was it part of kind of like a franchise or another organization? What was it that kind of drew you into, like, I want to do this myself?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned you're bringing it back. You know, I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit, right? I mean, from the beginning, my parents moved me down to the basement. I was in the basement. My friends went and found a desk and threw it down the stairs, you know, and then we fixed the desk up, and that became TPBS. That became an employment agency. So all of a sudden, I had all these women coming to my basement, and we were interviewing them, and we were getting them jobs. They were providing medical aid services throughout New York, cleaning services, babysitting services. We actually, so I've been, working. I loved it. I mean, being able to form something in your mind, and then all of a sudden seeing it realized, you know, in the real world, was something that I loved.
And how old were you at that point?
I was 24. Okay. I was 24 years old when we started TPBS, and we became the babysitters for the Mets. You know, back then, you know, Keith Hernandez called that he needed somebody, and we got somebody for him within 1 hour. You know, and after that, they all called us. It was amazing. Bucky Dent. Anyway, it was just really interesting. It was an interesting life, right? We started buying buildings in the Bronx. Again, you know, here I am just walking in, asking people if they're interested in selling their building, and I was going in there and renovating them. I got 2 of them. It was amazing. And that's how I was able to purchase. I sold them after a while. After I fixed them, they turned into rooming houses. I was able to purchase an apartment in New York City.
Okay. I was saying, were those homes that you were getting, like, were they duplex or like office?
No, they were actually, there were brownstones in Bedford-Stuyvesant, which was a really bad neighborhood at the time. And it still is. But now, I mean, those brownstones are worth millions of dollars. Back then, I paid $30,000 for one, you know, and I paid about $45 for the other one. So, and they had nothing. They had, the pipes had been taken away, the electricity, I mean, the electrical wiring. I mean, it was basically me going in there for 6 months and renovating them and renting them out. So I started at a young age. I mean, that's something that I've always loved to do. It really is. When I moved to Florida, it was no different. I started working for Kemper Insurance as a vocational rehabilitation consultant. I was certified by the state of Florida, and it was great. I was bilingual, so it was very helpful, especially in, you know, where I was working, because there weren't a lot of Spanish-speaking individuals. So they gave me a sign-on bonus and all this other stuff to join them. But within a short period of time, I opened the consulting services. I opened the community mental health centers. They're called partial hospitalization programs. And it was something that I really loved to do. Again, helping and providing the services that are needed, right? For the elderly, for teenagers, adolescents, children. We worked with the court system. We did mediation. We did supervised visitation. We did just about everything. So we opened around 94. We closed in 2000. At the time, Medicare was just rampant. They were going around putting everybody on 100% and closing everyone down. So I closed and I left. And at that time, I had about 6 other businesses. I had 3 coin laundries. I had a Miami Subs, which is a restaurant.
Oh yeah, well, I used to love Miami Subs.
Yeah, I had a Miami Subs. I had a number of different, I had a bunch of real estate. I had buildings on the beach and things like that. So I had to keep them going.
Yeah.
but once they're open, they're running on themselves. They don't need me. So what did I do? I went and I started working for a company in Chicago called George S. May. And they were a consulting company, which is something that I've always wanted to do, business consultant, right? At the time, I was about 30, 31 years old. And George May didn't hire anyone at the time. Well, a couple of years before, they changed their policy. But the policy was no one under 45 years old. So here I am in my 30s, and I put an ad, they had an ad in the newspaper in Miami. I responded to it thinking that they would never call. And all of a sudden, about 2 months later, they call saying that they're interviewing individuals over in Fort Lauderdale in a hotel, and I go over there. When I go over there, they tell me, well, we're going to give you a test run. And it's a 2-week training course. And if you make the course, then you're hired. And if you don't, then thank you very much. You just come back to Miami, Mm. In those 2 weeks, I lost about 24 pounds. That's how intense it was. None of us slept. It was, the first week was financials. And you can imagine what this is like, going through people's, finances. And they didn't give us a computer because they wanted us to know that we had to know more than the owners of these businesses. And we had to be fluent in the language and everything else. So it was important. I loved the job. I did it for exactly 12 months, which is what I promised my kids that I was going to do, just 12 months, because I would leave on Sundays and I would come back on Friday. And it was tough. It was really, really tough, But I loved it. I did that for 1 year. I came back to Miami, and what did I do? I reopened the centers again. But this time, instead of just opening 2, I opened 7 centers and a sleep center. In 2002, and then I had that from 2002 to 2010, which is when it was closed down. We had close to 600 employees. We had 7 beautiful centers. We were all Joint Commission accredited. We worked our butts off. We were open 7 days a week, and our training was incredible. I mean, it really was. I really focused on training the staff. We had superb staff. We had doctors. We had psychologists. We had nurses. We had general practitioners working there. We saw each center probably saw about 200-300 patients a day. So we were really busy. I mean, we really were, It was, they were beautiful centers. Unfortunately, we were in Miami. And in Miami, in order for you sometimes to work the business, you have to do things that are falling under the grayscale, as they call it, So that's something else. So what happened to me? I got caught. I hired a nurse, whistle blow on us, and they started an investigation in DOJ, Department of Justice. The investigation lasted about 4.5 years. And then from there, it turned from a civil investigation to a criminal investigation. And they came in and we told them, we were giving them information. We gave them all of our paperwork. We were giving them our financials every 6 months. They came in and they arrested us. And it was a big thing in the news. I'm not sure if you ever saw it or even if you've looked back at it, But you have President Obama going down the airplane talking about a $205 million fraud in Florida. And that was American Therapeutic Corporation. That was mine. So, and MedLink, which was my management company.
So that was the true number, right? The $205 million. I remember I did do a little checkup on it, and it said that it was the number 1 Medicare fraud in the world. So I always laugh about that. I'm like, he was number 1.
No, but let me tell you, first of all, that was at that time, okay? Now, there's been billions of others, okay? There's been
absolutely, yes, for sure.
That have done billions of dollars. But no, the $205 million, I'm glad that you asked, because in Florida, they go by what you build. They didn't go by what you received. So what we received actually was $87 million. So in that period of time, in that span of time, what we received was $87 million. And that was just from the Medicare program. The Medicare program was about maybe 55-60% of our business. And then we had private insurance to do everything else. We worked with the courts. We worked with Department of Children and Families. We also provided Medicaid services too to children. We provided mental health assessments. And these were very thorough assessments where we go in and interview teachers and family and staff. And this report goes to the judge because this child obviously is in court for some reason, So we actually would go in there and we provided that. And that was Medicaid services actually paid for those. So we did the full gamut. We provided divorce education classes for children, for adults. Here in Florida, if you're going to get divorced and you have children, you have to take a class for 4 hours, the adults, and the children to take it for 3 hours. So we provided those in all of our centers, and we have been doing it
Gotcha.
for a very long time. Yeah.
I've worked in business for quite some time now, and with that, I see where there is potential for adding a little extra, taking a little extra, like there being opportunities for backdoor handshake deals and things like that, kickbacks.
Yeah.
Like the more time you spend in that zone, the more you're like, oh, I can see, you watch TV, but if you don't actually work or look at financials or have that background information, it seems like something fictitious. Like it seems like something that is only in movies, but like it is truly a large part of the world economy.
Yeah, no, it really is.
Yeah. I was just really curious. What was it like in the beginning, like that brought that on? Like, how did that kind of start your, I guess, step into that side of it?
Well, I'm glad you're asking, and because it is really, and you're right, there's a very fine line. And the fact of the matter is that because we did 99% of the things correct, it doesn't justify the 1%, And in my case, just so you have an idea, the 1% that we did was kickbacks. And what happens is that in the law states you have the Stark laws and you have the anti-kickback laws in the country. These are federal laws. And you aren't allowed to pay for patients. You aren't allowed to pay doctors. You aren't allowed to pay the homes. You aren't allowed to pay physicians, judges. I mean, everyone that would be a referral source. Unfortunately, in Miami, we have this Latin spirit, right? I mean, we really do, and we kind of think that the laws really don't really affect us, and that we what's wrong with helping the other guy? We're not doing anything wrong. We're providing the service. We're doing everything right, and then that whole mentality, which is our mistake, where we say, well, everyone's doing it. But unfortunately, you're right. I was saying everyone's doing this. However, I was the biggest one, right? I mean, in the state of Florida and probably in the country when it came to mental health services. So when they came down on us, they came down really hard. And what happens is kickback laws is just 5-year sentence. But because of the amount of money, because of the $200 million, it actually received a life sentence. So it turned from 5 to a life sentence. And then the judge told me that because of my history, because I had no criminal history, there were no victims, there was no, there was no prior history, that he wasn't going to give me life, because if he gave me life, then the Supreme Court would take it off and I would go home, So what he did was he gave me a 50-year sentence. And the fact is that a life sentence is 30 years. So he gave me even more than a life sentence in reality. Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about the entrepreneurship side. I mean, multiple businesses at once, going through that and then continuing to grow it. Eventually, maybe good-natured or semi-thoughtful side of business turned into networking, which kind of continues down the line based off of cultural areas. I mean, that's how you run businesses, based off the location. Right. And then from there, it truly went into the legal side of it. So let's dive a little bit deeper. And if you don't mind sharing a little bit more of your personal side of that, I mean, the action of going through it has to be traumatizing. I mean, you had a family at the time, like like it's definitely, it's not like the entire world stops when it comes to just business. Like the entire world is brought in on it. So what was that like? Like, I mean, yeah.
I mean, it was devastating. It was probably those 4.5 years of me dealing with the government were probably the most unhealthiest time of my life. The stress level. I had law firms in DC working, and I had lawyers here in Miami also working. And just knowing that we were being followed by the FBI agents, that we were being followed by, all of our phone calls. The stress level was probably the most toxic that you could imagine, right? I mean, physically, we're not in good shape. I'm not sleeping, and I'm working 7 days a week. I'm trying to keep these centers going because, again, I'm concerned with the 600 employees. I'm concerned about my employees. Well, the fact is that when they closed down, they did fine. Thank God. I'm meeting them now and talking to them and so forth, and they've all done exceptionally well. But at the time, you're kind of blindsided. You have a very narrow view, and I kept justifying, well, we're doing 99% right. That 1% can be so bad. But the fact is that it certainly was. I tried to. I didn't tell my family at the time. I didn't let anyone know. What I did was that I spent time with the kids as much as I possibly could, knowing what was going to come. So I went on vacations. I went on cruises. I tried to spend as much time as possible with them. And that was, so that didn't make things any easier because there was no preparation for them, emotional, mental, at all. I was supposed to go pick up London on Friday at 7 o'clock and take him to school like I used to, like I did, 3 days a week. And and all of a sudden I had to call because the FBI was at my door and I was, in cuffs. And I asked the FBI agent if he could please call and let them know that I wasn't going to be coming and what was happening, So they weren't prepared for that. They really weren't. And and then for 15 years, because this is a very long process, but not even the 15 years, even just the first couple of months, now they're seeing it in the news over and over again here in Miami, local news, They're feeling completely lost. They're going to court with me. They're hearing what's going on, They're terrified. So as children, they were really impacted. I mean, they really were. And not in good ways, but also they showed growth because it showed a certain courage and strength in each of them and resilience, which I see today in them as adults, which I'm very proud of. But I know that at the time, it was devastating for them. I mean, they would cry all the time. They would come and visit me in prison on a weekly basis because at the time I was a detention center in Miami. I hadn't been moved yet to Pullman, Orlando. So for them, it was really hard. Now I go back and I look at all the pictures that I've missed in the last 15 years. I've missed all the holidays. I missed all their events. I miss them graduating. I miss them graduating elementary school, high school, college, their master's degree. I mean, all the Christmases, all the holidays you can imagine, even Halloween. I mean, right? I mean, just the small ones, the big ones, So it's unfortunate that at the time that we're doing this, that we're conducting this business and that we're doing these illegal events, that I'm not thinking how it impacts on the family. I'm not thinking how it impacts on the community. I'm not thinking even how it impacts on me, right? Because I'm just working. I'm just focused on getting this task done, and it's only when you're in prison and you're sitting in that cell and you're laying on that bunk that you start thinking about all of this and you start thinking about how it affects everyone. And then you're doing it from the place that is so isolated and so withdrawn from the world. The only world that we had was really watching it on television and the news. And that's not very realistic. And then the phone calls are 15 minutes. So you can't even have a conversation with anyone because by the time the conversation begins, the phone call is cut and you have to wait another hour to make a call. And then you're limited by the number of hours that you have in the month. So you can't be calling the family all the time because then you'll go through a span of 2-3 weeks. And that happened to me, unfortunately. I was calling them the first 2 weeks too often. And then I wasn't able to call them for Thanksgiving or Christmas because I ran out of minutes, So it's really, it's been, as you said, it's been an incredible journey. What I wanted, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, what I really wanted was, I was upset because I knew the kind of work that we were doing in the centers, I knew what the centers looked like. I knew the effort that we put in. And I also knew what we were doing wrong. And I never believed that the sentence justified what we were doing. And I understand that. Now, the law is the law. Anything over 200 million is life, is a life sentence. I understand that. But I realized when I was there is that you have all of these men in prison, incredible human beings, really, some of them, who made mistakes. And now it's like you've thrown the key away and they're just locked in. And all of a sudden they're locked into that sentence. And it's very, very difficult for them to get out. believe it or not, Trump is one of the ones that actually has helped, in his laws, uh, First Step Act, Second Chance Act, um, doing the clemencies and the pardons and so forth. Before that, before even the First Step Act, which I have to give, uh, his son-in-law is really the one that actually came up with it and really fought for it in the White House because of his father and his father's experience in prison. Kushner. So
Yeah.
before that, there were, there was programming, but you got no credit for it. So none of the guys were programming. They weren't taking classes. They weren't getting their GEDs. Why? You're going to sit there in prison no matter what you do. The First Step Act gave them an opportunity to say, hey, listen, if I try to improve myself or even take these classes, I'm going to get some time off. That's exactly what happens. Now, all of a sudden, you have these individuals that didn't have that motivation. Now they're motivated. And for me, I was always motivated. My goal when I walked in there was I want to embarrass, even though it doesn't work, it doesn't help, but I want to embarrass the BOP, the Bureau of Prisons, the Department of Justice, the judge, Lawrence King, for giving me a 50-year sentence. From the moment I walked in, I wanted to be the best inmate that I possibly could in every possible way. I got a job. I started cleaning showers. The minute I walked in, started cleaning showers. After 2 weeks, I started working and giving out food and cleaning and so forth, as an orderly. And I did that all throughout my 15 years in prison, believing in my heart and mind that this was going to help me, that it was going to show, that I don't deserve this. That this is something that I didn't deserve, and that I'm a better man than what I was portrayed as by the Department of Justice. So
That seems like a really interesting mentality to have. Like for such a long time frame, because you didn't realize you were going to come out at 15 years.
No.
Going into something with the mentality that you might die within the next decade or 2 or 3, like that's a truly difficult thing for people to grasp. Anytime you're dealing with your own mortality is a really challenging thing.
Right.
Was there a philosophy or like a particular worldview that you developed while you were in there that really helped you see it through? Because it's one thing to have the goal, have the mindset, I'm going to be the best I can be, but then it's consistency, the effort, like it has to actually stack up. So what was your mindset throughout that time?
I think it was spiritual. I think what happens is that, and when we were out there and we were doing our thing, even then, we went to church. I was a real believer in God and Jesus, and I went to Catholic schools and I really believed it, but I wasn't living the life, right? I wasn't, even though I went to church on Sundays and took the kids and we did everything that we were supposed to at St. Patrick's and everywhere else in South Beach, you're not living that. So when I went in with exactly that. My affirmations as I went and I saw help and I saw, suffering and I saw people being hurt was God is with me, he is in me and I am in him, and he's going to help me get through this. And I would talk to him all day. I would talk to him no matter what screens were going on, who was being hurt, what was going on around me. I felt a connection. I really did, I felt a connection, a real strong connection. And that carried me throughout. And I had faith that I was not going to do the 50 years. And I never let go of that faith. And I never let go of all of my goals and objectives while I was there. And what I did was that I put the same service-minded individual that I was doing when I was out, I started doing inside, working as a mentor, helping, teaching. When I was in the penitentiary, the Hispanics didn't have a lot of classes that were Spanish speaking that taught in Spanish. So these guys were never able to leave the penitentiary because they couldn't bring their numbers down. So I started teaching classes in Spanish. So all of a sudden, these guys started going, to other lower custody prisons and eventually home. So it's one individual making small difference, right? But it was a difference, and I did that with all of the guys. I went from one unit to a program unit, and that's where I stayed for about 3 or 4 years in penitentiary in the challenge program. And I worked as a mentor and I loved it. Again, helping individuals, helping,
Yeah.
hoping that it would help, but it didn't matter because for me, it was a purpose. And that's one of the things that you need to have when you think that there's nothing else is a purpose. because it keeps you going. It's like we take one step in front of the other.
I think you're absolutely right. I think two things is one is a belief in something bigger than yourself, and two is purpose, which kind of potentially go hand in hand depending on how your worldview is built out. And then you didn't stop there though. I mean, you continued going through like yoga instructing and things like that. And now that you are out, truly a free man again for the first time in such a long time, what has that been like? I mean, this is a new transition for you right now, a new point in your life with new experiences.
It really is. I plan on I have a lot of guys out there that depend on me right now to help them. And that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. So I want to make sure that I make the world aware of what is needed in prison reform. And what does that mean exactly, and what is lacking in the prisons today? Why is it that these men are coming out of prison so unprepared? Why is it that they're coming out of prison and their recidivism is so high and returning back to prison? And it's because of that. It's because they're not really being prepared properly. The trainings and the programs that they have, they're spending millions of dollars on them, but they're not effective or realistic in the real world. They don't pay salaries. So how are they going to do it? They can't. And these are individuals that were used to making certain amounts of money, but whatever the case may be, they have different individuals have different reasons, right, for being in prison. But they want to have a decent lifestyle. Not even, just a normal lifestyle, being able to support themselves, and they find that they can't do that. Or what I also found was that a great majority of them have mental health issues and problems. On Wednesdays, they would go and get their medications, and you see a line of about 700 people. That's incredible when you think about it, right? That those individuals they all have mental health issues, and they're in prison. One of my cellies that I had, listen to this, and this is interesting, but this is just an example of what it's like, right? One of my cellies, Rich was in a state hospital in Georgia, and he wrote a letter to Obama saying that he was going to hurt him and his family. So the Secret Service went, picked him up, arrested him, and brought him into the penitentiary. Now, he was in a state psychiatric facility for a reason. He needed to be there. So now they bring him into a prison. And in the prison, they place him on all these medications. When I got back from VT, I was as a tutor in vocational training, and the counselor was waiting for me. He says, Larry, she was from Brooklyn. I used to love her. She was from Brooklyn. So she comes in, she tells me, Larry, I need your help. Can you take this guy as a cellie? Nobody wants him. He just crapped all over the floor. So he, accidentally, because of the medications, the amount that they gave him, he had, feces all over the floor, including the stairs going all the way up. So I says, no problem. I'll take him. So what did I do? I had to go clean up the feces. I had to go get him, put him in the shower because he was so unable to function. That's how it was, the medication that they gave, that he couldn't even do that. I grabbed his clothes. I had to go get new clothes for him, dress him and everything else. And after about a week or 2 weeks, started stabilizing a little bit. His medication started kicking in. He was stable, I stayed with him for a number of years until I moved the unit. And I wanted him to come with me, but he didn't. So what happened? I left and he stopped everything. He stopped his medications. He stopped everything. And then he had somebody tattoo the Satan's Bible on his body. So when I saw him about a month later on suicide watch, there he is naked on suicide watch. And I'm looking at him and I'm saying, what did you do to yourself? And he has every scripture from the satanic Bible on his body. He completely broke down. He was supposed to go home about a year later. And what he did was that he wrote another letter, and the Secret Service came in, and then they did something that's called a civil commitment. A civil commitment is something where you look at the individual and say, well, from now on, this is where you're going to be, and we're going to give you a 7-year sentence. And in 7 years, we will relook at you, and we will redo an evaluation. So the fact is that they could keep him there for a very, very long time if they wish, So it's really, really sad. But like that individual with mental health problems, you have so many in prison. They go home and those problems continue. They resurface again because they stop their medications. They stop any type of treatment. There was another when I was at the medium, and he was actually a student initially, and because he was doing so well, they made him a mentor. Right? He was, but we watched him. We watched him closely. We made sure that he was on his medications, and he had good intentions. Before I left, the newspaper had come in, and this was here in Florida, that this individual had killed his sister and his brother-in-law, had murdered his sister and his brother-in-law. So we're looking at the picture and we're saying, this is not the same mentor that was in this, that was here in this unit. This is an individual that completely lost control of his life. His mental illness sort of took over, resurfaced, and nobody was there to watch him or to take care of it, and that's how it ended. It ended in tragedy. So he ended up killing his sister and his brother-in-law. It was just sad, So he'll come back to prison and he'll be there for life, right? And I see it as these individuals need help. They really do. And I think that it has to be, found somehow, right? And connected. And that's the problem, is that they're not really being connected when they get out. There's no connection, to the networking. I mean, nothing at all. There's a social worker in each prison, that is responsible for 1,700 individuals, So of course, a social worker isn't able to do anything. I mean, it's impossible to even think that they're going to do something. It just doesn't work that way. So there is a lot of need.
Yeah. I mean, the prison system is one of the organizations within the United States that costs a significant portion of like the taxes that truly kind of pay into it. With that, with so many changes in the political viewpoint, with Democrats, Republicans viewing on the prison system itself so differently and having such drastic changes like every few years based off the leadership, I feel like it does make it really difficult. Like one organization will implement a new change. They're going to say, all right, we want to make X, Y, and Z to make it better. And then 4 to 8 years down the line, it's like, yeah, we're going to completely scrap that and do something completely new. What do you think would actually be beneficial to the prison system at large? Is it like additional funding for more mental health kind of therapists or licensed individuals, maybe peer groups? Like what would actually help at scale?
No, what I really feel would make an impact is, you're right. I think that something has to happen inside the prisons themselves, inside the walls, inside the gates, But that's not as important as when they're released. Is that connection, is having somebody waiting for them and taking them through, halfway houses that are well prepared, because the ones that are there now aren't. They're not getting any help from them at all. I mean, they charge an arm and a leg, and they're not receiving any services, really. They really aren't, It's a shame. But it's even from the moment that they leave the gate. I remember when we were in the pen, we had another individual that had a mental health problem, and he was not functional. He had to live alone because nobody could live with him, and the doctor decided that was the way it's going to be. Even though in prison you're not allowed to live alone, but he lived alone. So the doctor told the BOP, listen, this individual cannot be released on his own recognizance. He can't handle it. No, he'll be fine. There's nothing we can do about it. He'll go to the halfway house, and from there they'll link him to community mental health center, and they'll link his services. Well, this individual got on the bus, and he has never been found again. Now, when you think about it, right? Now, the BOP himself, their own staff, is telling them, hey, please, we need to be able to help this individual and provide the service that is proper and that is needed to ensure that this individual can become stable in the community. He's going to be a neighbor of ours, And he was released and never found again. He never made it to parole officer. He never made it to the probation officer. Nowhere. They just didn't find him. And 8 years later, they still don't know where he is. So I think that it's more important that when they come out, that there is someone there waiting for them, and that there is providing real structure for them. Because when they're in prison, they have that structure. You see, well, good or bad, there's a structure in place. They need a structure when they get out that's going to help them. That's going to help them get employed. That's going to help them provide training. That's going to help them, with food. And they don't know any of that. They don't have that. One of the programs when I was at the Median in the skills program, they just got funded for it. is for activities of daily living. Now, the skills program is a program that is set up for individuals that have mental health problems. There's only two of them, only two in the BOP system. One in Danbury, Connecticut, and then one here in Orlando. And the one here is run by Dr. Benitez. Dr. Benitez is an amazing woman that takes her job seriously, goes beyond what her job requirements and responsibilities are. And there's very few people that you could actually see that actually do that, in the BOP system. A lot of them are just government employees. They're there for their salaries, which are not so bad. So this program is set for individuals that have mental health problems. They're autistic, schizophrenics, you name it, bipolars. I mean, they're the addicts, and the mentor lives with the patient, takes care of them, makes sure that they are doing their ADLs, that they're taking their showers, that they're washing their clothes, that they're eating properly. That's what the mentor is doing, and the mentor receives $10 a month for that. And this is not an easy job. I did it.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a lot for $10 a month.
Not an easy job. And I also, during that time, developed programs. That's where I did yoga. I taught yoga for 6.5 years. I also taught it, at the Low and at the Penn when I towards the end. But anyway, incredible program. So they funded a new program, right, inside the skills program that was going to help them. And this is what they did. It never opened, and it's probably going to take another 1.5 years. But they came in, they said that they had the money, so immediately they got rid of about 3 or 4 rooms. One of them became a grocery store. They were going to set up a mock grocery store. The other one was going to have washing machine and laundry to teach them how to do their laundry, because the individuals that are going to be coming in were much lower functioning. And that's what we're seeing right now in prison. You're seeing individuals that are coming into prison that are much lower functioning into the federal system, where it was never seen before. Before that was state. They would go into state, and then they would, again, neglect, or they would put them in state hospitals. So the banking, there was one room that was going to be a banking service to help them how to make money, how to make change, and how to open up a banking system, and how to help them budget and so forth. But once they get their budget, it takes about 2 years for them to set it all up. Even though they had ordered everything from Amazon and we had it all in there, the program never started. And I was there, and when I left, it still hadn't started. And from what I know it hasn't started yet. So it'll still be another year. But that's the kind of thing that we have, right? They fund it, they open it, and then it never really, comes to be.
Yeah, the execution is the hardest part of any plan. Yeah, because you could always say something, you can think of something, that's always the best thing. Write 1 million lists, but actually putting something into action. So, Lawrence, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, diving deep into your background, looking more into your personal mindset when it came to the prison system itself. I really enjoy ending my podcast by asking a question. If you had one tip, trick, or experience, something that you would like to share with the world to help them in some way, what do you got for them?
I'll tell you. And I'm glad that you asked. That's an excellent question, because you asked me, what have I learned, right? I mean, what have I learned through my experience? And one of the things that I told myself before, and I made it, I sort of made a promise, right, to God, right? I said, listen, you let me out, and I'm going to be an honest man, right? Because we believe that I believe that it was okay to fib, right? I mean, a white lie, this and that, would be fine, and what happens is that it just continues to grow and grow and grow and grow. I think that it's important for us, and I think that even as business individuals, as fathers, as mothers, as humans, that we be honest, with ourselves, and that we be honest with our community, with our individuals that we contact on a daily basis. I think honesty is a virtue that is extremely necessary, and if we do that, I think the world would be a much better place. And unfortunately, I think that we don't. I think people have agendas, they have secrets, and they keep, these thoughts to themselves. So for me, it's honesty. I told myself, from this moment on, God, if you release me and you let me go home, I promise that I will be honest. And every day, that's one of my affirmations. I am going to be honest, whether it's painful, because it can be. I mean, it really can. It's not easy to be honest. It isn't. Sometimes, we care for someone, we love someone, and we don't want to be honest with them because we know it's going to bring them pain. But it's necessary because once we break down from that, it all breaks down. It really does. So I think honesty is something that, especially in business, I think that's extremely important. I think what you had said earlier about, people going on great points, and looking at gray areas, not so black and white. We have to be careful with our ethics and with our honesty in every aspect of our lives. I mean, spiritual, personal, financial, every aspect of it. They say, right, that every individual in the United States can be found to have broken the federal law. That's just a fact, right? That's what they say. But I think that if we're honest in our life and how we live it, that we're going to avoid, my missteps, as you can call it, or pitfalls. What do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I definitely love it. So, all right, Lawrence, thank you so much for coming on. What are you currently working on now? Who would you like to connect with, and how can they reach out to you?
Okay, great. Well, I'm one of the things that I've done is I've opened up a consulting service, Duran Consulting Services, and I'm going to be a prison advocate, for reform. I'm working with individuals. I'm going to be working with Alice Marie Johnson, and with her sister, with Dolores Hill, and with the Office of Pardon Attorney. I'm going to be going there on a regular basis and trying to see what can we do to help get these individuals that have been down for such a long period of time, 20, 30 years, that have really transformed their lives, and that they're not the same individuals that came in. They really, really aren't. I'm seeing these individuals that are amazing. They're creative. They're artistic. They're able to do so much with their lives today, and they have. And these are individuals that had no chance. They came in when they were 18, 19, 20 years old, gang members. Violent crimes, But this isn't the individual that they are. Yet they have no chance of coming out, if the system doesn't change. And that's where I want to try and bring some change in. So I opened the company up, and I'm going to make every effort possible to help these individuals. They're counting on me, so I can't let them down. And I told them that I wouldn't, And they're counting on me because what they saw for the last 15 years, they saw that I always work to help. So I can't let them down.
All right, Lawrence, thank you so much. Do you want to throw out an email address, a phone number, your online social media, something for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, sure. My email address is lsduran620@gmail.com. My phone number, if anyone's interested, and I certainly will speak to anyone going into prison that needs some help, that needs to be prepared, that needs to know what to expect. Because I think one of the things that happens, the greatest fear and the greatest thing is to avoid pitfalls and mistakes, is to be prepared before you go in. I didn't do that, but I certainly have the knowledge now to be able to help individuals prepare for exactly that, So my phone number is 786-860-9045. So please feel free to contact me. Please feel free to reach out.
All right. If you stuck with us this long, I truly appreciate it. This is The Climb. Lawrence, thank you so much. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you, Manuel. It was a pleasure.